Kathleen, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today. Why don't we just briefly start learning more about who you are and what your background is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kathleen Booth, SVP of Marketing and Growth at Pavilion. Pavilion is the world's largest private community for go-to-market executives and those who want to rise into that executive role. And our mission is to help executives be successful in their careers. And my role is to lead the revenue function at the company.
Amazing. I know you and I both started our Pavilion journey as members, and then you ended up joining the community full time. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that experience and what led you to take on this responsibility at Pavilion?
Absolutely. So, as you said, I was a Pavilion member first. I owned a marketing agency for 11 years and I had sold that company and gone to work for the company that acquired us. And when I finally decided to leave and go into a role in B2B tech, I circulated my resume and a friend of mine shared it within what was then the Revenue Collective, which was the previous name for Pavilion. And I started making these amazing connections that were really helpful to me in my job search. And I thought, boy, I should get involved in this organization, which I did. I joined pretty early on. It was the fall of 2019. And I had an amazing experience. I was a member for 2 years prior to joining the company, and it was transformative. It helped me find jobs. It helped me be successful in my jobs when I got them. It helped me build an amazing network of marketing. I come from a marketing background, so marketing leaders as well as broader go-to-market leaders, chief revenue officers, chief customer officers, CEOs, etc. And it was always there for me. So when the opportunity arose to join the company as head of marketing, I really leapt at it because I felt like this was something special, and it's very rare in your career as a marketer to be able to lead marketing for a product that you have very deeply experienced as a customer and that you really believe in. And I think when those opportunities come around, they are incredibly special and we need to take advantage of them. So here I am. I still believe in it just as much today, and I still consider myself a member just as much as I am a member of the team.
What do you love about your job or your today most today?
Oh, I think honestly, it's going to sound really trite, but it's the people. I mean, we are a community, and it's amazing the number of people I've gotten to know and to build relationships with over the years from all over the world, all different skill levels, all different company sizes, and all different backgrounds. And today I consider many of those people to be good friends, and they've helped me in my career tremendously. And I think there's a feeling when you walk into the room of a Pavilion event that's just unlike anything else. I mean, you see people who've never met in person before hugging each other. And I think for some people that might sound a little strange, but it really is kind of magical. And it's because this is a community that's based on values of being helpful to each other.
Yeah.
And so you often find people who've really supported each other or helped and made introductions or provided them with feedback on a resume when they were applying for a job or a warm introduction. I think when that happens and then you finally get to meet in person, there's really something special that happens.
I will absolutely second that as a member, or just like generally speaking, one of the best things that I do is attending Pavilion dinners. I always walk away, whether it's in Atlanta, New York, or San Francisco, I always walk away from that conversation feeling, better about my growth overall as a leader and smarter. So one of the things that I share with a lot of go-to-market leaders is that if you're in B2B go-to-market leader roles, it is one of the easiest decisions for you to join the Pavilion community. Tremendous value.
Yeah, it has been great. I am a big believer in it.
So one of the first questions that I want to ask you is, and this is something that I hear over and over again in my conversations with other fellow Pavilion members, these days, it feels like an impossible role to be a B2B. Why do you think it has become so difficult to be a B2B CMO today?
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question and such a difficult one to answer. I think there's a lot of different forces at play. First of all, I think it's always been difficult to be a B2B CMO because the marketing function is one of the very few functions within a company where everyone feels like they have some degree of natural expertise, whether they were trained in marketing or not, whether they have any experience in marketing or not. Because we experience marketing as consumers, as buyers. And so we know what we like and we don't like. And I think a lot of people jump to the conclusion that if they like or don't like something, then that is a universal truth, right? And so talk to any marketing leader and they will tell you that this is a thing. Like people who have no experience in marketing telling them, oh, you should change this or do that differently. So there's like that dynamic has always existed. And it's a particularly frustrating one for marketing leaders because it's hard to think of many other roles within a company where somebody might say, you don't really need to have the background to do that job. Like, oh, we'll just replace the CFO with somebody who doesn't know finance because like it's finance, right? Or we'll replace the head of sales with somebody who's never done sales before. And yet, we have a lot of companies that are putting, for example, chief revenue officers in place who have no marketing experience and they're putting marketing under them. And I think for marketers, I think there's a lot of frustration in that it seems to send a signal that you don't really need to know how to do marketing, which is tell that to anybody else in any other role and they would really be offended. So there's that dynamic. And then there's this dynamic that I've seen play out a lot particularly because I've worked in earlier stage companies, that when something isn't working and the company isn't hitting its revenue targets, it must be marketing's fault. And, very often it's not. Like, I mean, for example, I see this all the time in earlier stage companies where the product doesn't have product market fit yet.
Yep.
And the best marketing in the world can't make up for lack of product market fit, right? Or if you don't have a sales team that can close, the best marketing in the world isn't going to fix that for you. And I'm not sitting here saying marketing's never at fault. That's not the point. The
Mm-hmm.
point is that these things are all interconnected. And very often it's just easier to scapegoat marketing. And I think so. I think that's another dynamic. And then I also think then there's the whole topic of AI and what it means and the influence it's having on the way we do marketing. And I think we're just at a fascinating moment in time where there's both risk and opportunity. I think for marketing leaders that are willing to lean into AI, tremendous opportunity exists because there's a lot of data out there that shows that marketing leaders are at the forefront within their companies for AI adoption. Maybe like with the exception of like a CTO or an engineering team that's building an AI product, obviously that's different. But we're ahead of sales teams. We're ahead of the customer success team. Like we are dramatically ahead in terms of how we're using AI. And I think that opens up an opportunity for us to be like a center of excellence, to show what good looks like. But AI is also changing everything about our teams. I was just having this conversation with someone earlier today that like, if I were to start at a new company tomorrow and I were asked like, how would you build out your marketing team? My answer would be dramatically different today than it was even just a year ago, because I'd be
Mm-hmm.
looking for people who were more generalists, who were they have what I call a high figure it out factor, who like to lean in and use the tools and automate things. And it doesn't mean that I believe everything should be automated, but it does mean that I believe we should push the boundaries and see how much we can automate and ask that question first. And so there's that. And then lastly, I will say there's this what AI is doing, it's commoditizing a lot of marketing. It's making content really easy to create and all these artifacts that like over the years, we as marketers have put a lot of our resources into the creation of artifacts, whether those are, blogs or emails or social posts or ads or white papers or webinars. Like we've put a lot into the creation of these things and not as much into the distribution of them. And now in this new world, the creation of artifacts is something that AI can do pretty easily. And so we need to shift our focus and think about distribution and brand, because the way that large language models decide how to answer questions, so much of that has to do with brand strength. And so, these are things I think marketers have believed all along, but it's been hard for us to sell that companies should invest in brand. And now I think the industry is coming around and people are starting to see this, but they don't really know what it means to invest in brand. And it's still hard to measure.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I just put out there, but it's like a special sort of brew that's happening that marketers are caught up in the middle of right now. And it's a very uncertain time for them and very
I
frustrating.
completely agree with you. It feels like the perfect storm, multiple forces coming together, creating a really the perfect storm. And at times those forces are not necessarily connected, but they merge at the same time and is creating a tremendous impact. One of my hypotheses is that, especially on the B2B side, the playbook for marketing that most CMOs relied on over the last decade, a decade and a half, is nowhere near effective as it used to be just 2 years ago. And on top of that, we had this sort of philosophy change of growth at all costs to profitable, efficient growth. And to me, it feels like the CMOs are the first to get the brunt of these two major shifts happening. What would you say?
Yeah, yes, it's easy to look at marketing and think that's an area where we should cut. And I think that the really hard thing about what you just described is that this focus on profitable, efficient growth is in many ways needed. Like we were drunk on money a few years ago
Yes.
and spending it like it was going out of style. And the result of that was that when there was even a hiccup in the market, a lot of people lost their jobs because the structural integrity of the way the market was operating was non-existent. And, if you remember, there was a lot of talk on LinkedIn at the time of like, this was irresponsible of these companies to hire at this pace and to do what they did. And I don't know how I feel about that, but what I do feel is that right now we're in an era where we're trying to be more responsible. We're trying to live more within our means. And that's not universal. There are certainly exceptions to that. And generally, when you pair trying to live within your means with living at a time when brand is more important than ever and AI is unsettling and causing the traditional playbooks to not work, what that does is it places an immense amount of pressure on marketing leaders to measure everything and to be able to justify all the investments they're making. And the problem is that so much of what works today is the hardest to measure. So what I hear from marketing leaders that's working is, for example, events. And I would say that's true of my marketing. Like a lot of what we've put energy into at Pavilion is the creation of our own events or showing up at third party events. And that works. Like people are just craving that human connection. That's where a lot of business is being done. But it's certainly not perfect. And there's all kinds of other brand investments in terms of like companies investing in the personal involvement of their subject matter experts and their CEOs on places like LinkedIn. That also works really well when it's done correctly. Also really hard to measure because your attribution system isn't going to say, oh, that was your CEO's LinkedIn post that turned into a DM that turned into somebody coming to the website. If you want to invest in brand, I think there is some degree of you need to have a tolerance for risk because not all of it is going to be perfectly measurable, but this focus on profitable efficient growth is like a counterweight to that because investors, boards, CEOs, at least this has been my experience and what I'm seeing throughout the Pavilion ecosystem is the question they're asking is like, what's the customer acquisition cost in that channel and what's the payback period? And we can all like come up with numbers, but are they really
Mm-hmm.
accurate? Like with these kinds of channels? No, they're really not. So that's the fundamental tension.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, especially on the B2B side of things. I genuinely believe that attribution is a myth that we forced each other to believe that and it exists. Especially, I see this every single day in our Slack community where the CMOs are asking each other for recommendations for tools. There are all sorts of different WhatsApp chat groups that are happening with peers. There is no viable way to measure the impact of any of that, and it has tremendous influence in the buying decision. I understand the need to basically better understand the buying cycle and how it's impacted, but this notion that there is clear ROI for basically channel by channel, and you can basically do a media mix modeling that will help you get this, beautifully efficient customer acquisition cost is, I think, delusional.
Yeah, you're right. I see it all the time too in Pavilion. People saying like, "Give me your favorite, HubSpot web design agency," and somebody puts out three names. And I actually think that we're going to see this move towards what I'm calling community engine optimization. So we had search engine optimization, then we had generative engine optimization, but really so many buying decisions, especially with executives, they happen behind like walled gardens. And Pavilion's a great example of that. Like you have to pay to be a member. And once you pay, you're in the Slack. And then that's where the real conversations are happening with people saying, like, who are some messaging consultants you'd work with? Who should I use for my swag vendor? Who's an events agency I should hire? All the time. We have these conversations happening all the time. And they're very difficult to attribute and to measure.
Yeah.
What's going to happen, and it's already starting, like where Pavilion's going to be releasing an AI that will help you surface the answers to those questions more easily by looking within the community and seeing, like, if the question is who's an expert in clay, for example, it'll look in Pavilion and not just see who everybody has said is an expert in clay. It'll look and be like, who's answering all the questions, who's contributing really good information on this topic. And that's like a natural, again, community engine optimization way to show up at the top of the list. I think you're going to see that happening more as like helps us with discoverability of information. It'll be, yes, we will count on references and referrals, but it will also be this like natural process of, are you somebody who has leaned in the past and shared your expertise? And if you are, like, that's the personal brand equivalent of showing up in the LLM. You will have made an investment that will have you show up, and that will pay dividends.
I completely agree. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your earlier in your career. You spent a decade building and running an agency. It was one of the first HubSpot agencies out there. How did you know HubSpot was the right bet to build your agency on?
Great question. So my husband and I owned a company that when it first started was a corporate gifting company. And so we worked with large corporate real estate brokerages, and they would do very high-end gifting for their tenants and their prospective customers. And we would work with them on these like really custom campaigns. And we were looking to market our own business and we're just sort of paying attention to the different platforms out there. And it was actually my husband who came across HubSpot and was like, this is a really interesting platform. Like, we should take a close look at it for ourselves. And we started to do that. Like, we started to use it for our business. And it was funny. It was very early days. I mean, this was like back in 2009. And it was when social media was like just starting. I sound like a dinosaur when I say that. And then we had a lot of people that we knew begin to say, hey, you guys seem like you're doing this pretty well. Will you help us with it? And HubSpot was such a like integral part of how we did it for ourselves that it made sense to join their partner program, and when we were helping others, to encourage them to use it as a platform as well. And so we kind of stumbled upon it, but it was really transformative to us because at the time they were teaching a different way to think about marketing. And I think we're in one of those moments again now. Like, we need different ways of thinking about marketing. And it'll be really interesting to see if like another platform emerges that is built to meet this moment that we're in today, much like HubSpot was built to meet the moment we were in back then.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And I had the unfortunate luck of, at the time, competing against HubSpot. I worked for a SaaS company who was traditionally in the PR space, and they made multiple acquisitions and built a all-in-one marketing automation software that competed with HubSpot. And they basically ended up really capturing overwhelming majority of that market. And going back to, what you said earlier in our conversation, I strongly believe that HubSpot did not win because of their product. They won because they built the inbound marketing movement. It was their branding and the fact, and it was their storytelling that led to their success in the long run. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I remember in those early days, they were not the clear front runner. It was always, people were always choosing between HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and Eloqua. And to a certain lesser extent, MailChimp, right? Like, and it was not obvious always that HubSpot was the choice. And arguably some of the other platforms had better products, but HubSpot had two things going for it. I think one of those things was that they were very committed to consistently improving the product and to really like making it have the most user friendly user interface. And I really think that's part of, eventually they did sort of win on the user interface because they made it so simple to use. Whereas all those other products, with the exception of like MailChimp, but like Pardot, Marketo, Eloqua, really, really tough to use. Like to this day, I don't ever want to work anywhere that has Marketo. It just seems like a horrible, horrible experience.
Yep. And
But
Eloqua was bought by Oracle, and I think over time they became even worse.
yeah, yeah, they're not easy to use.
Not at all.
And then, you know, their brand, absolutely, like they were fun, they were different. They, the story I always tell is what I, you know, for many years I went to Inbound every single year
Yeah.
as a partner. And every year there were people that I knew personally who would like dye their hair orange for Inbound or paint their nails orange or buy
Yeah.
orange sneakers. There were people who would be like, I'm bleeding orange. You know,
Yeah.
like the language that they used to talk about it, there was such loyalty and passion behind like affiliating yourself personally with HubSpot. I
Yeah.
never personally dyed my hair orange, but like it was pretty amazing to see. And I think that's like, it's a testament to the strength of the brand that they built. And I'll give a shout out to Pete Caputa because he was the one that built the partner program originally there. And he's now CEO of DataBox. And a lot of that came from the partners who were big, big fans of the company.
I think both writing the book, Inbound Marketing, Dharmesh and Brian at the time, and then creating the Inbound Conference and letting that stand on its own. Like when you think about the Inbound, most of us know that it's the HubSpot conference, but when you look at the overall branding, it's just like can stand on its own. And I think the most brilliant move that they made was betting on the inbound marketing and then that being associated with HubSpot, but not in a brand dominated way, in a very subtle and organic way.
Yeah, they were always great were and are always great storytellers. I mean, I think they have one of the best like old world, new world stories when I'll never forget, there was a slide they always showed about inbound marketing, which is like, you know, before it was ads, it was this, it was cold calls and spammy emails, and now it's this. And it just was very simple, very clear, very easy to understand. And you like felt it as a buyer. It made sense.
I wanna switch gears a little bit, and you briefly talked about this, but on your LinkedIn post today, you made the case that the winners in the AI era will be generalists. Why do you believe so? And what does that mean for the future of marketing organizations?
Yeah. So the whole idea here is that AI is very, very good at becoming an expert in very niche things. Um, and, you know, before AI, if you were a human who was extremely good at something very niche, you could command a premium because you were one of very few people on this planet that was great at X, you know, X, that given thing. Now, generally, for a lot of those specialist tasks, the AI is better than we could ever be because it learns so much faster. The challenge with AI isn't extracting very specialized expertise. It's providing the context for how that fits within our broader strategy. It's connecting the dots. And so those generalists have an opportunity. And I think there's also like something about the promise of AI being largely still unrealized because as humans, like our limitation is our own imagination. And there's so much that we could use AI for, but we have not even imagined so many of the use cases yet. And so when you take a specialist they're probably going to be great at using AI for their specialized thing. But there's this world out there of things we can do with AI. And I feel like the generalist is the one who's will be poised to understand, like, these are the broader use cases. These are the ways that we can, spot patterns and use AI across different use cases and applications and connect the dots. But and then there's like the last piece there is like it's all about judgment too. Like that's the thing that AI doesn't have is judgment and taste. And I think generalists have an opportunity to really put themselves at the center of the conversation by applying judgment and understanding like where and when and how to use AI appropriately within the company.
Do you expect this to make an impact on how marketing teams are structured in the near term? Are you making different decisions about your organization at Pavilion based on this hypothesis? Tell me a little bit more about how this change is impacting your decisions and your actions when it comes to your marketing team at Pavilion.
I'll give you an example. So, about 7 years ago, when I was at another company and I was building out a media brand, I had to build a robust editorial team within my marketing organization. And because we needed to put out a lot of content and we had podcasts and we had video. And at the time, I was really looking at hiring people who were great writers to produce all this content. And then we had videographers and we had, designers, and it just was a big team to do all of this work. Today, Pavilion is building a media brand, and I'm thinking of it as more how can we take an AI first approach to this? I definitely don't need a lot of writers. A, I can source a lot of interesting thought leadership from my community, but B, really like it's not about like your ability to write, it's about the thinking behind the writing. So you need smart people who have points of view, who have insights, and then the AI can like take that and sculpt it and make it into something commercially presentable. So like let's say it's an article, it can write an article based on like somebody's expertise, but it can also spin that article into 10 LinkedIn posts and 2 emails and the outline for a webinar and a white paper and a playbook. Like all the people that used to do those things are not necessarily needed anymore. You really need somebody who's an orchestrator who can look at this opportunity and say, for example, we're going to create a piece of content on topic X, and I need to find a subject matter expert on this topic and develop a point of view. But they don't have to like package it up into a finished article. I can just turn on a recorder and have them speak, capture that, plug it into an AI, and then create a prompt chain or a series of prompts. Or I can create an automation in a platform like a Copy AI, and it's going to create all of these various assets for me. And oh, by the way, there's now even AI that can create the ad creative. Like it can do so much. And so I think traditionally there's been a role within marketing teams called like an integrated marketing manager, which
Mm-hmm.
is the person that like pulled all the different pieces together to make sure that a campaign came together and worked appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like there's a variation on that role that's emerging now, which is like a more AI forward version. And, people talk all the time about this title, go to market engineer, and some people love it and some hate it. I don't know if that's what this is really called, but it's like an
I
integrated
I
marketing.
I feel like GTM engineer is more on the either RevOps or the sales side of things. If you were to create your version of that, and let's specifically focus on marketing, what do you think that looks like? Because the term was one way or the other was invented by Clay. They are really pushing it hard. They are really hot in the market right now. They raised, I think, in
100
total
million.
over the last year in 3 tranches raised $200 million.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is definitely a there. Having said that, it is more or less is right now the usage of it, at least the way I see it, is on the really cold outbound side. Right? Like it's data enrichment and personalization for the traditional SDR, BDR motion. And in that, I haven't necessarily seen the implementation of that role on the marketing side. Like how are you imagining that role for your or let's
I don't even need
say,
to imagine it. We have it
okay,
already.
tell
So
me more.
this is what I was saying earlier about a failure of imagination. Like I think there's this phenomenon, like there's an old saying, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think because of the way people think about GTM engineers and this concept, they are mostly applying it to sales motions, as you
Okay.
described. But that's sort of because they're hammers and everything looks like a nail. And so they're thinking about how to do sales differently.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I have a phenomenal person on my team who comes from a marketing background, but has the heart of like a RevOps person.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at these tools and he sees all the possibilities in marketing because he has a marketing background, but he's a
Mm-hmm.
generalist, again, back to what we talked about. So
Okay.
he understands like content creation, but he also understands performance advertising. He
Mm-hmm.
understands, email nurturing and sequences and all of that. He can look at the tools and what they're capable of and see very clearly, like, oh, these are the things that we're doing right now manually that we can completely do differently. Or these are the
Mm-hmm.
things that we're not even doing yet because they would have required such a degree of manual work in the past. But
Mm-hmm.
now, like, he is teaching a course on clay for us. And, he shows you how you can very easily go in and not only score a list of people on the degree to whether they're your ICP, but you can scrape their websites and see who their ICP is as well. Like in the past, you would have had to just like go to people's websites and manually research that. Like I probably even a year ago would have hired somebody off of Upwork to do it for me,
Mm-hmm.
old school. And you don't have to do that anymore. The AI can do it all. And like that's why I think you need somebody who gets the discipline at a broad level. They don't have to
Okay.
be like the best expert in paid
Mm-hmm.
ads in the world. They have to be a marketer who understands marketing. And then they need to really be AI forward and tech forward and be able to say like, this is what these tools are capable of. I can now see how they would apply across all of
Okay.
these jobs to be done that my marketing team has. That's like where the real unlock is.
Okay. I love it. Let me ask you a follow-up question. How exactly are you structuring this? Like, are you letting him loose and giving him special projects and let him figure it out? Or are you using him as a resource for your specialists to make them even more effective and add more leverage to their specialist expertise?
It's sort of in between because I couldn't even let him loose because he's broken free, if you will. Like he sees the possibilities and he is so excited by what's possible that in his nights and weekends for fun, he's sitting around and he's like, "You wouldn't believe what I just built." Like he sees the vision and he knows how much easier it can be, and he's just taken the ball and absolutely run with it. And that's not everyone. So like if I were
Mm-hmm.
rebuilding this organization today and I didn't have this amazing person in place, I think I would just look for somebody who has that kind of marriage of like very tech forward, very leaning into AI and understanding the capabilities, but also has like the general marketing background. And I would probably work with my team and map out all the jobs to be done, and we would ask ourselves together like which of these could be done by AI, and we would start there, and which,
Okay.
and then you would do a classic like where's the what will have the most impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had this person on your team already. You didn't necessarily over the last 6 months or so intentionally recruit this person.
No, I was very lucky. We hired him
Okay.
before OpenAI released ChatGPT. So he just like he has stumbled upon his zone of genius. I'm very
Okay.
fortunate.
Let's assume you didn't have this person. Okay. And through your network at Pavilion, you know these type of people exist. Help other fellow CMOs, VPs of marketing, how to think about this role, how to structure and how to go about recruiting such a person.
Yeah. So at one point we did talk about hiring for this role and we were going to call it like a go to market engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind that term. I don't know why people bristle so much at it, candidly. And it is a little bit of RevOps, but it's a RevOps person who's just very, very AI forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met people who started in marketing and then went into RevOps, and that you can really like come at it from either direction. You can either be somebody who started in RevOps and just loves marketing, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. But it needs to be where the two come together And it needs to be somebody who really, really enjoys playing with AI and
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries there.
Is it fair to say systems thinking, ops thinking, plus that sort of creativity is needed, like
Yeah.
both, not either or.
Yeah, because, I think, I don't know, maybe people will disagree with this, but I think there are a lot of RevOps people out there who are really good at certain platforms. Like I'm a Salesforce expert or I'm a HubSpot expert, and that's great.
Yep.
But with AI, none of us are really, really experts right now because, like I said, it's changing so quickly. We don't even know all the things it can do. And so that's the biggest, I think, adjustment in how I'm thinking about it is like, I don't necessarily want somebody who's just a platform expert and they went through all of the Salesforce Trailblazer community teachings. I want somebody who was like, I'm going to open up a platform and I'm going to work with it until I have it figured
Yep.
out.
I completely agree with you. You can't have the rigidity, that sort of the baggage that comes with being the expert of tool X, and the rigidness of we've always done this, or you do it in way X or Y. You have to have that operational thinking, that systems thinking that comes with being a great RevOps talent, but you also need to have the flexibility and the creativity to be fluid, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. So after running marketing teams for 2 decades, how do you go about building a top-notch marketing team? Like, what are your fundamental approach or philosophy to building an exceptional marketing team?
So what might surprise you is like expertise in marketing is actually not the top of my list. What I have found over the years is that the most high performing people I've hired have what I mentioned earlier, which is that high figure it out factor. Like they are people who just love being presented with a challenge and don't need a lot of information. Like they don't need a playbook or instructions. They're just like, here's a problem, go solve it. And they're like, yes, I'm going to sink my teeth into this problem and figure it out. Right. That number one. And then number two is a very high degree of ownership because at least I personally also work well with people who are very intrinsically motivated, who want to win, who want to have their name associated with building the cool thing or pulling off that amazing event or coming up with that incredibly creative marketing stunt idea. Like the people that are motivated personally by that are the ones who I find like combined with the high figure it out factor, the sky's the limit because there isn't a playbook anymore. There just isn't. And like we
Yep.
all have to figure it out on the fly. And it's going to
Yep.
change again in a month and 6 months.
Yep.
So those are the people that are like, bring it. Let me see what that ChatGPT 5, it's out yesterday. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to like see how I can use it in 10 different ways. Like that's the magic.
I completely agree with you. I think it is really short-sighted to focus on pedigree, specific experience, especially looking for specific industry experience in your specific sort of vertical, if you will. I think I had the best success when I was hiring for attributes rather than pedigree or specific experience. How do you go about selecting for those like tactically? Do you have any recommendation, tips, tricks about how to look for it, how to probe for it, how to, pick the right ones from the talent pipeline that you have access to?
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, I should clarify because I think I might have been slightly misleading. While marketing expertise is not at the top of my list, like I do want somebody that has done marketing because I did start this
Absolutely.
whole interview out by saying like marketing is the one thing that everybody thinks they can do. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm just going to pick a plumber up on the corner and,
Yeah.
they're motivated and I'm going to turn them into a marketer. That is not what I'm saying.
Having understanding of fundamentals of marketing is table stakes. I completely agree with you.
Being deeply curious about
Yep.
what motivates people.
Yep.
So, how do I identify those people? I think some of it is honestly like you can pretty quickly skim a resume and see, have people always like made the safe choice? Have they, taken chances, done interesting work? What are they like actually where what a resume is most revealing about is ownership. Like that was my second criteria. And if people talk about like the outcomes they achieved, the results, that to me speaks to ownership. Like they recognize that their work has to have an impact. They can't just like do the thing and check the box. So I look for that. And then I would look for, there are certain, other proxies. Like if somebody's worked at a company that I really admire that's doing really innovative or interesting things, that's one signal. It's not certainly required. And then I try to look at their work, like examples of what they've done in the past. And this is also controversial, but I do require some kind of practical exercise as part of the hiring process
Yes,
because that's the only way to see how people really think on the fly in a way that isn't rehearsed. And so, for better or for worse, that is part of how I hire. And it has
yep.
been very revealing over the years. Like,
I
all my best hires come from seeing the results of those exercises, and like all of the ones where I'm like, whoo, I really dodged a bullet by not hiring that person. Like they might have looked great on paper, but they couldn't put together, a deck on a strategy to save their lives.
I strongly believe that we have to make paid work trials the norm for hiring for any role, especially in roles like marketing where, the output and also how you get there is really important, and you can't necessarily see that from a resume. And then the other thing I believe is that marketers are really great at selling themselves, but like, they are great at interviewing, and the best way to read through that is some sort of a work trial.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right. I want to talk a little bit more about overall Pavilion's team culture. You guys are 100% remote all over the US, and actually you have team members outside of US as well. Tell me a little bit more about where in-person events are such an important part of what you guys are doing. How do you really maintain that team cohesion? As the marketing leader, what do you do differently to be able to manage a high-performing marketing team? Tell me a little bit more about, what it really means to be managing a, global marketing team.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I'm a big fan of remote first environments, and partially because I live in a place that's not a, tier one city where there's a lot of tech jobs. So working remotely has worked out very well for me. But I've been hiring remotely since 2015. So 10 years now, because when I owned my agency, we couldn't find the right people in our town. And so I hired people from across the country, and it taught me a lot about how to run strong remote teams. I think there's a few things that are key. One is you do have to bring people together in person at some regular cadence. That's how relationships are formed. Um, Number two is you need to set up frameworks for communication, reporting, team time spent together virtually that are structured, that are regular, and that are not always only about work. So, like, I'll tell you, in my team, we have a daily virtual stand up in Slack where everybody it's sort of like based on the concept of agile, where everybody puts, like, here's what my top 3 goals are for today and any impediments I have. And it's just a great little, very quick touch point that happens, and it gives us all visibility into what's happening with each other. We have a Friday wrap up call where I always start it with music. It's like my team laughs at me and I DJ, and then everybody comes in and it's just fun. It's like we go around the virtual room and everyone says, like, what was your peak of the week? Who's someone on the team that you're grateful for, who you want to shout out? And then we have an icebreaker question, and it could be as simple as, like, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or where's one place you would love to go on vacation? Or, do you prefer hot dogs with ketchup or mustard? It could be anything, but it's about, like, getting to know each other personally
Mm-hmm.
and showing that you care about who that person is outside of work. To me, those are, like, they're small, they're really important. But then, like, the other half of that is the work half, which is you need to have structured ways of working. And so, like, to me, having the regular one-on-ones is really important, and having clear, like, documents where we track what we've talked about and what we're doing and what our priorities are and how we're performing against our targets. Like that's all really important as well.
Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying. And especially getting together in person. If you're trying to build a remote culture and you're not able to break bread together once in a while, I think it's detrimental to your team and company culture. And that has to be one of the bare minimum investments organizations have to make, where it doesn't have to be on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, but at least once a year, bringing the team together and breaking break together makes a tremendous impact.
I completely agree.
All right. My last question. What is the most valuable marketing skill one can learn in 2025?
I would say right now it's got to be like being AI fluent.
What does that mean for you?
That means, well, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. Like, that means getting in the tools on a daily basis and not just chat GPT. Like, yesterday I took a course that we were running on how to use Clay. And next I'm going to test copy AI. And then next I'm going to use GenSpark, and like getting in and playing with these things and understanding how to use them is super, super important.
All right. What are the top three AI first or AI sort of centric tools that you use in your marketing for the last quarter or so?
I mean, I personally use ChatGPT multiple times a day. That's the platform I've chosen for myself, and I have it like
Mm-hmm.
set up so that I have a ton of custom GPTs and I have a
Yep.
ton of projects, and it's just working really well for me. Clay is one that our team uses a lot. Copy AI, I think I mentioned, is another
Mm-hmm.
one. I think those are probably the top three if I had to guess.
Kathleen, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, it was great to chat with you, Anil. Thank you for having me on.